Welcome to the Couchboard, where we naively talk about anything and everything for your listening pleasure. I am Jordan, and with me today are Colby and Max. How are you guys doing?
Good.
You're on mute, Max. I imagine you said great.
I said I'm doing terrible. No,
Oh,
I'm
my
doing
goodness.
great. Thank you for asking.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no problem. Well, today we're diving in deep. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and a lot of exciting stuff. So,
Never has a statement been more true that we are naively going to talk about something today. We're naively talking about artificial intelligence.
that's right. That's right.
But I did see Mark Zuckerberg in the comments over the last couple of weeks, so maybe he'll learn a thing or two from us as he's programming his own artificial intelligence. So, Marky,
Yeah,
we'll only
It's
charge
up.
you $1 million for this advice.
Unless Bezos offers more.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Well, before we jump into the topic, let's catch up a little bit. How's everyone been doing? Max, what's been going on in your life?
Let's see. Well, I figured out that with all this political conversation going on these days, I figured out when I run for president one day, I'm going to base my campaign on something practical, something that actually matters to the average Joe, and that is
Potholes?
people that drive slow in the left lane. Why can't we fix this problem in our society? In fact, if there are any of you that are listening to this podcast that is that person who drives slow in the left lane and makes people pass you in the right lane on the freeway, get out of the Couchboard. We don't need you.
You're dead to us.
Well, so anyways, I just did I went to Tucson over the weekend and just a 2-hour drive back and forth, and it's just mind-blowing to me how many people can't figure this thing out. And when I drove a couple years ago, we went on a vacation to France, and there, I mean, like, people, when they get into that left lane, pop right back over immediately. It was just like a thing of beauty, and it was so efficient.
That stretch between Tucson and Phoenix, they cannot get it right.
And there's like even like 3 lanes, and it's just like,
Yeah.
you have 2 other lanes you could be in right
Yep.
now. And
Never had that problem. I just get right behind their bumper, maybe a foot, and they move.
I usually just pass them on the shoulder.
so,
The fourth lane.
but yeah, I think if someone were to run for president on that platform, he or she would have my vote. I'll tell you that.
But what else are you going to say about it? I mean, they've got signs posted.
Oh,
Don't
I'm
drive
talking
in the
about
left.
like actively like sending the police out to enforce this, and like a way maybe like we install cameras on cars, like smart cameras that are hidden in there, and then you just like hit a button, sends it off over to the nearest highway patrolman or woman. Go track that person down, find them, lock them up. There's got to be consequences.
I think
People
we
never
just
learn.
I think we just go full Twisted Metal and we just put weapons on the cars.
Yeah. I'll be is Axel the clown, or is Axel the guy that was like in between the two?
Sweet tooth.
Sweet tooth.
Sweet
Tooth was the
tooth.
clown.
Sweet tooth. Twisted
Yeah.
Metal. All right, that's a future episode topic is Twisted Metal. Again, it's funny when people say something like that, like, man, when was the last time I've actually like heard those words together and like thought of that video game? It's probably been over 10 years. So, but other than that, the NBA is back. I am unfortunately a diehard Phoenix Suns fan, and they are crushing it right now in the bubble. They're the only undefeated team. They're 7 for 7, which is amazing because they were well below 500 for the season, and they are just having a phenomenal run. And maybe if they get lucky, they might crack a chance to get into the playoffs. They have 1 game left on Thursday, and they need to win that, and then they need the Grizzlies to lose as well. So fingers crossed, pulling for the Suns.
Mm-hmm. Yep, my fingers are crossed. That's for sure. No, I tuned into a couple minutes of a couple games here and there. It's nice just to be able to watch something and tune out a little bit, but at the same time, I don't think it held my attention. So
That's fair.
back to Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Back
I
to
had
Seinfeld. That's a good substitute.
I have a game on right now, and I'm debating just leaving and watching instead
Excuse me.
of talking to you guys.
That is not allowed.
Just
Which game are you
kidding.
watching?
Kings and the
Don't tell me
Pelicans.
Oh, you don't care about that game.
No, I don't really.
Especially because they've both been eliminated from... So
Yeah.
that game really is meaningless.
Yep. Pretty meaningless. I'm a Clippers fan, so go Clippers.
Yay! Colby, what's been going on?
Not much. Figured out the school thing for the kids. We have a hybrid program that we found where they can go and then do home stuff, kind of evenly split. So that's where we landed on that. So yeah, that's good. We're a little relieved to have that. It's outside of our school district. Ours was an all or nothing, so we found a different school district that was doing the hybrid thing, and works out.
Yep.
So that's fun.
Very cool.
Yeah, I don't think anything else is really going on. It's hot. It's not as hot as it is for you guys, but it's been hot up here for Utah.
Well, I watched 2 movies. One I hadn't seen before, Dunkirk, which is...
I'm surprised you hadn't seen that before.
Oh, well,
Really
I'm glad
liked
I
the
hadn't
party,
seen
Jordan.
it. It was a terrible movie, and I hated it so much. The only good part was Tom Hardy and the Admiral guy, whoever that was. Forget his name. Mm-hmm. Never knew his name. But everything else was just like the guy in the boat, the dad, the grandfather, whatever you want to call him. He was cool. But everything else, the story is just kind of lame. How it was bouncing around all over the place with the timing and stuff, and the one soldier that it followed around the most of the time. I was like, why do I care about this person? He's just not talking. They're not doing anything. Couldn't get into it.
I'll give you that. So, I liked Dunkirk, but I hated I cannot say more how much I hated how that story unfolded from like a timing perspective. I thought that was just it was very distracting. And I've heard some people try and make the argument like, no man, it's like the only way that story could have unfolded. I'm like, no, there had to have been a better way. It was very confusing and it was very distracting. I mean, like obviously everyone figures it out, but it's just kind of jarring in the moment when it happens and not needed. But where I disagree with you is I actually kind of like that it kicked a few of like the war movie cliches and stereotypes where you really don't have like, you don't really get a close connection with like any of the characters. Like they're just guys and you really don't have like a sense of like who they are, what their background is, what their families are or anything like that. And so that I actually kind of found a little bit refreshing. And there was also just some really tense moments in the movie overall, with like the soundtrack and just the anxiety that it produced that I thought Dunkirk really excelled at. So yeah, that's my take.
I didn't hate it, but I thought it was slow.
Yeah, slow and just, I don't know. I get you don't have to tell a completely linear story. I get that, but this just seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, it was choppy.
I will say real quick before we leave Dunkirk, when I saw it in the theaters and some of those shots of like the planes in the air were just tremendous. Yeah. Those were, and I guess I think if I remember correctly, like they actually shot those scenes in the air, with actual planes, and it looked phenomenal.
Yeah, I thought again going back to Tom Hardy. I thought he did great with. I thought everything about the plane seemed authentic, mm-hmm. like even the little rear view mirror and stuff, and like them writing with chalk on it because his fuel gauge was broken, like gauging how much fuel he had left. All that seemed like plausible. Like I'm sure they had to come up with those tricks and things for flying those original aircraft. Not really original, but old aircraft. So that I thought was really neat. Some of the effects and things were cool with like the ships going down here and there, but I just couldn't get behind the story. It was just like, But
yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, I disagree on some points, but I could not agree with you more on just. And I think that's I love Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, but I think I think I've said this on previous episodes. The guy has got to find a different mechanism or vehicle outside of just messing with time. Like if you go all the way back to like Memento, to Inception, to Interstellar, you know, at least in some of those movies, they're a little bit more sci-fi, not Memento, but it's like, okay, yeah, I can, but it's like, come on, dude, this is a war movie. We don't need to be messing with like how time unfolds in this, but you did, so whatever.
And then speaking of Christopher Nolan, I watched Dark Knight Rises again, and it was good. I mean, it was good. It was probably the worst, in my opinion, of the three, but it was good. It was a little, I don't know, things that stood out to me more as more of like a little cliche. A lot of the Catwoman stuff was just like, come on. Did you need to like, all of the, I don't know, her phrasing and stuff, everything about tying back to cats, it just...
But isn't that kind of how Selena Kyle is? Isn't she just kind of an obnoxious character, period?
She is obnoxious, yes. Obnoxious. So, yeah. And so her character got on my nerves. Again, I think she did in the original, you know, the first time I saw it. But anyway, it was good. It was just, it seemed, when we first saw it, it was like, wow, things fell apart pretty quickly there. But again, now we're kind of in a chaotic time in the world. It just it's like, well, kind of realistic, and how, you know, things can just devolve, right? COVID's got everyone locked up in their houses, and it's just a mess. So it was a good movie. I definitely like that series of Batman films.
Maybe it's just because I've seen the first one so often, but I feel like I like Dark Knight Rises better than Batman Begins.
Oh, no way. No way. Batman Begins is my favorite one of all three, actually. I think I like it more than The Dark Knight, even though I love The Dark Knight. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
I just love watching Batman become Batman in that movie. It's super
I think
fun.
I've just seen it too many times or something.
I thought they did a great job in Begins of him becoming Batman sort of legitimately through his company and stuff, using their, you know, military contracts and things. That was neat. But then
his motive too was also interesting in that movie, for like how he wants to like understand criminals, and like he just I don't know, I found that whole plot line fascinating. In fact, I kind of actually think that's one thing that they messed up in the series, is like I thought the feel of Gotham was really good in Batman Begins, when you like have like the Narrows, like the slums that just were never really came up in either of the sequels. But whatever.
You gotta love Heath Ledger. I mean,
sure,
probably the best Joker portrayal. But then, you know, when he's fighting Bane in the third one, like he was just throwing punches a whole bunch. I'm like, dude, you're Batman. You've got gadgets, like all the gadgets. Like you gotta do something more. And then the one thing he does is throw the little smoke bomb, and not even smoke bomb, but just the little explosion thing. It's like, I feel like they really missed out. I mean, I get the point of that first fight with Bane, what he was supposed to lose, but just kind of frustrating.
Dark Knight Rises is probably my least favorite of the three. I think I like the first one, then the second one, then the third one in that order. And the thing about Dark Knight Rises, and I can't even really quite put my finger on it, is like it just feels like a very ambitious storyline, like where they're trying to set up like Batman. Like there's just like this huge like war for like the soul of Gotham, basically, and everyone rallies around like what's right, and so Batman no longer needs to be Batman anymore, like, and so they kind of like take the city back for themselves. Like I think that's like the overall plot line that they're trying to set up. And I don't know, for whatever reason, it just, something about it just doesn't really land correctly for me. And again, I really enjoy the movie, and there's a lot that I like about it, but it's almost, maybe it's just like too ambitious and too over the top that I can't fully appreciate it. But it is what it is.
Yep. One question for you both, and then we'll move on. Do you wish they made a fourth with Robin in the mix?
No.
I literally never thought once in my life that I wish they would have made a sequel. In fact, I tip my hat that finally, like, there was like a series that was making tons of money, and they kind of bowed out before it got bad.
Do you remember
So
Batman Forever and Batman and Robin? Come on.
They're fantastic. Yes, of course I remember.
I know we need to get back to. We need to. I guess I would be fine if they made a sequel as long as Arnold Schwarzenegger came back and reprised his role as Mr. Freeze. All right, I could get behind that sequel.
Chill out.
So good.
The one thing I did like about those movies is they brought in a lot of villains in one movie. And I feel like when you think of Batman, you think of all of the villains that he has to fight all the time. And it's not like there's only one in Gotham at one time stirring up, messes. So, I don't know. I thought that was kind of fun.
Condiment King.
Well, he always had. Yeah, Condiment King. There was always two villains in each of these Dark Knight movies. There's always, you had Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul in the first one. Then you had Two-Face and Joker, and then you had Talia and
Bane.
Yeah.
Talia was a little bit of like an
secondary
afterthought kind of
afterthought. Yeah.
But really, she was pulling the strings the whole time, Jordan. She was the mastermind, so...
I guess. Anyway, okay. Cool. Good stuff. Great stuff. Okay, let's jump right in. So, as we always mention, we're going to talk naively about something that we find kind of interesting. At least I think is kind of interesting. Artificial intelligence, there's a lot of implications to it, a lot of benefits to it, a lot of uses for artificial intelligence, and potentially a couple drawbacks. And so we just want to dive into this a little bit. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll have a two-parter, a three-parter, four-parter.
And the fourth parter, we will have designed our own artificial intelligence.
That's right.
We'll just ask him or her questions.
Fantastic idea.
As they slowly enslave all mankind.
Stay tuned, everyone. So make sure you subscribe.
Yep.
You don't want to miss this.
All right. So let's jump right in. So up front, let's there's a couple buzzwords that I think we hear quite a bit, mainly like machine learning and artificial intelligence. I'm going to say artificial reality a number of times, I'm sure. So get used to it. But AI, artificial intelligence, is the science of training machines to do human tasks, or to give machines human-like properties. Whereas machine learning is kind of just a subset within machine learning where you train a machine to learn, to do different tasks and things on its own rather than programming it to do those specific things. So, and there's a lot more to artificial intelligence that I don't understand. So we're not going to go any deeper than the surface, the crust. Okay, so first off, let's jump into where do we see uses of artificial intelligence? Can you guys, before we even got into our outline, our thoughts on it, our questions on it, do you recognize or have you recognized areas of artificial reality in your life, Colby?
Like uses of artificial intelligence that I deal with?
Sure. Yeah, your day-to-day life when you're getting ready for the day, when you're going to work, whatever.
No, not true AI, but definitely machine learning. Machine learning, just machines getting better and better at the task that they're assigned to do with given more input over time. So like, we use the Google Homes and they learn better and better what we mean when we say things. Google, yeah. Just the Google search based on your profile has been doing that for a long time. Learning better and better what you're interested in and giving you more customized results. So that's probably the biggest example I could think of.
Yeah, I think social media, Google, YouTube, probably most common examples. Max, you have any other?
I think in today's world, I have a harder time finding situations or industries or cases where machine learning or AI isn't being used or isn't relevant. Like it's pretty much You've got to do it now. In fact, if I were to go back in time and tell little old Max what to study in college, like I think I totally would have focused more on math and programming because I just there's going to be no slowdown, I think, to this field. Like, it's just exploding, and I think there's no end in sight to the demands that for really good data scientists. Like, every company's looking to try and find ways to interpret their data more efficiently. So it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, as I started looking more into it, it did become more and more apparent. Like, and you don't necessarily even think about it, but like a game I used to love to play way back in the day, Command and Conquer, or Red Alert, StarCraft. Like, there's artificial intelligence even tied into that, and how your enemies, or even your soldiers, whatever, how they move around the map and stuff. And like, I didn't even consider that. You know, you always, if you're playing like Mortal Kombat or something on Super Nintendo, Sega, and you play the computer, you just think, well, they're just gonna, I don't know, do moves, and you don't really think about how they're reacting. But I mentioned before, we have the Super Nintendo Classic, and so we've been playing, you know, there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fighting game and like DC one, but they all have, like, you can set the computer to different difficulties, right? And so it's funny to just think about, like, what does that mean as far as AI goes, right? You're really determining how smart or how capable the AI is going to be against you in that fight. And so, I don't know, that's very rudimentary compared to what companies are at today. But I think, like you said, Max, I think it's around us more and more, and it's, I guess the more you learn about it, you'll recognize it more and more.
Think about chess, playing the computer in chess. And isn't there like something where like they've tried to pit like the best chess players like against like a supercomputer, and they all fail to
yeah, the supercomputer wins.
They've done it with League of Legends too. And after after the computer played, I think like I don't know, a certain number of human players, nobody could beat it after that.
Yeah.
Funny.
Not cool. But so there are those examples of where they do those one tasks a lot better than humans can do. But it's interesting, like, that's what right now, at least, that's kind of what the only thing they can do is like a certain number of tasks really, really well.
I think it's interesting that, sorry to cut you off, some of the things that they're really good at these days are things that don't have as much analog or physical, aspect to them. So like self-driving cars, definitely not where they will be in the future, and not as sophisticated. But something like a video game, a computer game, where it can bypass the physical inputs and just give the inputs digitally, it has an edge because it's faster that way. But when it has to move to analog and then maybe back to digital form, there's a delay that holds AI back. So there's some applications where I think that's a big gap in where some AI applications are not as advanced as they need to be.
Yeah. And looking into this, there was a distinct delineation between exactly what you said, the digital and the physical. Like, we think of robots, we think of that, well, that must be like artificial intelligence coming to life, like, which in a way, it is, but really, I mean, robots are pretty basic right now, right? I thought Max?
I was going to say, like when I was in school, I took a trip out to Japan, and we saw, you guys have probably seen the robot, but we went to it's called Pepper, which is like a pretty popular robot around the world that, like, if you go into like to a store or like a branch at the bank, like, they can program this robot to welcome you and like perform like some very basic tasks that a human might. But still, at the end of the day, like, and this is like one of the more cutting edge versions of like a robot that exists today, but there's definitely a variety of limitations with even like one of the better options to perform some of these functions. So
No. Yeah. So I was listening to, I think it was just an MIT scientist that is really into, self-driving cars, and that's his field of study. And he was saying, like, we've come a long way, but he was saying, I don't think we'll have self-driving cars in the next 10 years, maybe not even like next 20 or 30 years. And I think it was a couple episodes ago, I was like, yeah, we'll probably have self-driving cars in 10 or 15 years. And when he said that, I was like, nah, he's dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's going to be 10 or 15 years. But then he starts to break down like why we're not going to. And it's very interesting. Again, how do you train an artificial intelligence to recognize things that come to humans so naturally? Like when there's someone standing at a crosswalk ready to cross, you can look at them and like in a glance, you know exactly if they're going to cross or if they're hesitant and waiting for you to, make sure you stop. He said, but how do you program a computer, to recognize those split second, millisecond type of expressions on a human and determine whether or not they're going to jump out into the road or not. And so I think there are, again, those basic things to driving that we can program into our cars, and basic, cars since the 90s have had with even adaptive cruise control has started to pick up, or backup cameras and stuff, and it's automatically stopping you. Like some of those things, or lane detection, those things are pretty easy to program because they're based off of, there's a big stopped object in front of you, you better slow down. And so it's easier to program that, whereas when you're interacting directly with a human, right, it can be a lot more tricky. So there's definitely a big divide between the digital and the physical. So I think the more and more I could rattle off a number of examples of artificial intelligence, right? With medicine and being able to scan through a bunch of medical results and stuff like that, and they can quickly sort through that data and churn out answers, diagnoses. But Max, you brought up, since you're going to be running for president, you brought up having cameras everywhere that would stop those left lane slow drivers. And so what do you guys think about like privacy concerns with governments starting to use AI and machines to keep people in check? Is that a good thing?
I actually, for whatever reason, just like don't have a lot of concern about this. Like, I guess, and maybe it's the millennial in me, but I'm just not overly concerned about my own privacy. Like, I am totally fine with Google knowing where I am 24/7, and I let them know where I am 24/7. It's like, by all means, have all the data you want on me so you can make my life a little bit easier, especially as time goes on. So yeah, from a privacy perspective, I don't really care, especially after listening to was that Joe Rogan interview with Edward Snowden. I think if he's to believed in some of the stuff that he asserted in that interview, privacy's already kind of gone out the window anyways. So yeah. I don't really I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings on it. I've already kind of just acknowledged the fact that the government, along with several mega corporations, probably have an insane amount. In fact, there's actually an interesting thing you can do with Google is, I can't remember where you can access, but just Google like how to see what Google thinks of you, like what you're like, and you can pull up like a page and it will say like, oh yeah, here's like all the things that I think Max likes. And it's kind of interesting just to go through and read that and pick up. And I went through it one day and yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I do like sports. Yeah, I do like video games, like, and all sorts of just like random little topics. So they've already got that information on me. My privacy's already been thrown aside. So bring it on, by all means.
Yeah. Colby, what do you think?
I do think we've given away a lot without knowing. in the past because we've been on the cutting edge of this, you know, this technology that's been coming out over the course of our lifetimes. But I do think it's a concern just because these are private corporations that really don't have a ton of laws that say how they can use that data. And a lot of that data also goes to the government, and I just don't trust anybody in government like at all. So, like, you know, I think there's some worry there because of potential corruption. But other than that, I mean, there's not a ton they can do. Like, if they leak my emails or something, or read through my emails, they're going to find a lot of really boring conversations, you know, mostly just people sending me ads. But, you know, you still, you know, your address, you know, where your kids go to school. There's stuff that you definitely don't want out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard balance to strike because, Max, like you're saying, we've kind of grown up with this emerging technology. You know, we bought some of the original smartphones, and so when Google, you know, releases a new app, it's like, oh, cool, let's try it out. Let's see what this is like. What kind of tech is this how is it gonna improve my life, right? So we run out and, you know, get the latest app that they released. Speaking of which, there is a Google Plus lawsuit going on right now.
I got an email about that the other day. Which, does anyone participate in these class action lawsuits? It's just it seems like too much work to maybe get $100 back.
Well, you are sadly mistaken because it's an easy click and you'll get $12 actually. So just kidding. Well, no, I'm not. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But, you know, so it is funny that sometimes when you jump on that stuff and then it is not as secure as you think, you know, comes back around. But at the same time, you know, we are so invested. It's like, it's a very tricky scale. Like I want to be given, like we're saying, I want to be given ads for stuff that I'm interested in.
Right.
Because then I might find something new that would help my life so much more. But at the same time, it's also like, how are you getting this information? You know, what kind of data from me are you farming, you know, mining to, you know, send me this advertising, you know? It's like, and is it really a big deal if they read through my emails? If they just have a computer scan through my emails or scan through my texts or whatever to suggest, hey, you go to McDonald's 15 times a day. Maybe you'll want to try this new sandwich they have, right? I mean, does it matter? Who knows? But at the same time, it, like Colby's saying, it is a little kind of sketchy. Like, what do they ultimately do with this data?
What could they do with it?
Exactly, yeah.
Seriously, what could they? I don't know. And again, maybe it's because I feel like, if you read through my emails and through my texts, you'll probably be pretty bored. But, you know, like
the other thing is that, like, that their data, when they take your data, it's not secure. And then it's not just a question of what they can do with it, but if somebody wants to get a ton of people's individual data who does have malicious intentions,
sure.
I mean, we have big hacks like that all the time.
And that is a concern for me. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you there. But I feel like most of like the organizations or companies that have access to my data, like I'm pretty comfortable. Like if Google gets hacked big time one day, great. Me and the rest of the world is doomed.
Well, here's an example that I think you look at it and you're like, well, sure, yeah, of course, but you also kind of think, wait. No. So I guess when Google Homes were originally coming out, they filed a patent for, you know, their Google Home to listen in to customer surroundings, right? So your Google Home is there in your bedroom or in your kitchen or whatever. And so technically it's just listening for, you're the okay Google buzzword. Sorry if I triggered anyone's Google. I did just mine. Hey, look at that. But it has to always be listening, right? And so the patent said something along the lines of, listening in for the sounds of the surroundings. And so people were saying, well, I forget if this is in the patent or just in the dialogue about it, but like how long people are brushing their teeth, or does the family argue, or is someone in the house sick? And so when you think about it like that, like, okay, so if they can hear someone coughing, right? Now we're in the middle of COVID and like contact tracing and stuff. Like you think, oh sure, like we need to trace everybody's contacts if they've got COVID, which is like, yes, I get that, but at the same time, it's also kind of crazy that they could be giving out my medical information without my my consent, to potentially, lock me up in my house, quarantine me forcefully. That's a little weird, and I know I'm taking a number of leaps there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say. But all right,
do you have bubonic plague?
Hey, that's it. But that same exact thing is happening in South Korea, right? They automatically were contact tracing by way of people's phones, like because they track their location history and stuff, and so then they put two and two things together, and so then they were forcefully quarantined in some areas. So it's like, I don't know, like it could be, could be abused in some ways, and that, I guess that's the tricky one. Is I think location history is a weird one that they track. Like I saw a news story of a guy that did happen to ride past a scene of a crime like once or twice, but it was just because it was on his way home from work, and they arrested him because they suspected he was involved in the crime,
right?
Based on his location history. It's like, because
but on the flip side, they've caught a lot of people thanks to phones. Like they were like, no, your phone was here at this time or whatever. So yeah, and I think.
But it's also weird though, right? You're not giving the government consent to track your history. You're giving Google or Apple or whatever.
Sure.
So it's like,
but then they go get a warrant to get your tracking history from Google. And I'm again, I recognize this might not be the most popular opinion, but I'm totally supportive of that, and makes it that much easier to convict murderers. It's no, yeah, you had motive, and the 4 hours that person died, yeah, you were the only phone in that area burying the body or something like that. Great, cool. Makes it that much easier to lock people up. I mean,
keep drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
when I'm president, if I so much as get a whiff of your phone pinging from the wrong cell phone tower, I will come and send my brigade to lock you all up. If you're saying bad things about me in your text messages, I'll have robots reading them. I will lock you up.
Oh, I do agree with that. I'm not doing anything wrong. What do I have to worry?
Right. But, I guess that's kind of my philosophy.
But you also think if someone was going to murder someone, they probably wouldn't bring their phone with them for that exact reason.
Probably, but they always do
and then someone else could be framed for it, No,
yeah. I hear that point, but ironically, most people are there's just so many little variables you have to think through. Anyways, now I'm getting us sidetracked with true crime. But I will say, recently, going back to the conversation of the positives that come from these platforms having access to our data. Recently I got an ad, I think it was on Instagram, recommending knives for me to buy, and it was funny because since I've been making sourdough, we have a bread knife that must be 20 years old. It is a hunk of junk. It can't cut through a good crusty loaf of bread to save its life. And so anyways, it's on Instagram, saw an ad for a knife company that got moving on Kickstarter. So yeah, I bought a bread knife from them, and I'm happy I did. In fact, I'm gonna make sourdough this weekend, literally just so I can try out my new knife. And again, I didn't it was a good ad, and it makes me happy. So keep taking my information.
Yeah. I think we've all had that where we're talking about something we don't normally talk about, and then we get ads for it. It's like, huh. All right. Which app do I need to turn my microphone off on?
Yeah, and I'm always like a little. Everyone like says that, and I'm like, yeah, I just like I don't know. Like, part of me thinks it's coincidence. Part of me feels like you're probably like I don't know. There's so many little data elements that make up who you are. Where is it totally out of the ordinary for them to know that you'd be interested in said topic? I don't know, but I mean, I know what you're talking about. We've all had the feeling like I was literally just talking about this 10 minutes ago. And it's like maybe you have like been served like those ads in the past, and you're only freaking out about it because it feels a little more suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, and it's weird, but whatever. What are you gonna do, right? But anyway, we're getting too deep into the weeds of privacy. That's episode 3. We gotta take a step back. No, I'm kidding. But there are privacy concerns, but I think there are plenty of benefits to it. You know, they were saying in this video I was watching how doctors 90 to 95% of the time, successfully predict like masses in your lungs or whatever based on looking at x-rays. But over time, machine learning is getting close to 100% of the time being able to train itself to look at certain things and find, your diagnosis right away. So it's like there's plenty of like real life examples of the pros. I brought up in our food episode, McDonald's serving your drinks to the, filling it right to the brim with their robot soda dispenser. There's plenty of good things about artificial intelligence, and plenty and some drawbacks. But any other thoughts? Any other general thoughts about artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting distinction between like robotics and programs and robots that perform functions, and those designated as AI, because like the barista, the robot barista, at the coffee shop in San Francisco or whatever, like I'm sure there's AI involved in that. So that's a bad example. But like if you look at like
the McDonald's,
the McDonald's one, or like in a car plant, right? Yeah. Those don't necessarily have to have any sort of intelligence. Yeah. They simply are programmed to perform a function, and that that code, that function is static. It does the same thing every time, given the whatever inputs it's given. And so the difference between AI is the ability to learn and do something better. So like that's where I think the important distinction is, and where a lot of the benefit like takes off exponentially. But also the risk takes off exponentially, like with the detection of masses in your chest cavity. You could have a program that looks at it and detects, if there's a mass there based on whatever criteria the program has. But it's when it's looked at so many that it learns better how to detect them, where the utility just goes way, 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 way up, and it becomes much more valuable and much better. And therein also is, the paradox of the capacity for machines to then start making decisions and learning things that may be adverse to human benefit, and you end up with Skynet. So,
bingo. Thank you.
And that's something that a lot of people I think are legitimately worried about with true AI, with true artificially intelligent machines.
Yeah, as the intelligence, as it grows beyond, as it does learn enough that it grows beyond our capabilities. Yeah, I mean it becomes unmanageable, and then goes into not just stage, but into the mindset of, well, I have to do anything necessary to survive, because I've got a certain job to carry on, right? And yeah, I think that's down the road, but something, we need to be conscious of now. And there's definitely a lot of morality built in, or just understanding where we need to stop, the progress, before it can become dangerous, potentially dangerous.
Haven't most tech leaders felt like express this concern, and that kind of like validates that it's not totally science fiction. Like I feel like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and others have said, no, it's not just like science fiction. It's not, too out there to think that this could actually potentially be a problem someday down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stephen Hawking said the same thing. A lot of smart people have put a lot of thought into it and said that that's, there's some potential danger there. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Max.
I was just going to say, I mean, from the limited exposure I've done with machine learning and AI, like personally myself, and again, like just like baby building blocks, I was like, this can't be a problem. But, yeah, I think there's a whole nother world above what I've been exposed to and have experienced, where if there's, people in the tech world that are obviously a lot more savvy than me, that are, if they're concerned about it, then all right, I'll defer to their judgment on this topic, and I'll live in fear.
Yeah. Well, I think there's degrees or environments where it's okay to push it to its limits. I think if it's for the theory of it, or if it's for just the understanding what capabilities we have in creating some sort of super intelligence, that could be one thing. But like, if it starts to fall into the hands of the wrong people, it could really become something treacherous. So, yeah.
I also think there's a huge potential for accidents. I mean, nobody's ever written a perfect program without any bugs, because you never know where the bugs are until the program runs and, is used for different applications. And then you find places where it doesn't run as you intended. Yep. And, every program has to be debugged. And by the time we're creating true artificial intelligence and we realize, oh, there's a bug there, we might be dead at that point.
The nukes were launched. And I think that's a perfect segue into the meat of this topic, the most important part. What are the best AI movies out there? So I think we've touched on pretty much Age of Ultron.
Yeah, Age of Ultron it's one of my least favorite Marvel movies in the series, but
when it comes to AI,
it's a pretty good. I mean, yeah, it does kind of make you. I remember watching that movie and pausing for a moment and being a little concerned about AI as I was watching. Like, oh, this is a little alarming.
Could this happen?
Well, yeah. I think what they do a good job of that is just like how quickly that artificial intelligence could spread throughout the world with just the internet, and that was something I had just really never thought about before, and so that was a fun, yet scary way of telling that story.
It's interesting too that Ultron, like his priority was upgrading himself, right? And so if we made a machine up to the point where it has the power and ability and desire to make itself more powerful, have more capacity, more processing power, more storage capacity, at some point it would become unstoppable.
Yeah. I didn't really love the movie, but isn't it Terminator Genesis, where they go back to the Genesis and it like is starting off with like a social network, and they're gonna turn this certain social network on, and then that kind of spirals out of control where they can't contain it anymore, and then it turns into Skynet eventually. That was interesting.
I don't remember.
Well, yeah, it's because no one cared about that movie. So after number 2, maybe 3, is good, passable. Then after there, it just kind of falls apart. But this one, it was based around a social network of some kind that this big company, a Facebook-esque company, was going to launch, and it's going to make everyone's life so much better. And then they do turn it on, and it turns into Skynet, and that's the genesis of where Skynet starts and the robots start taking over. So, I wouldn't say that's a good AI movie, but Terminator 2 is probably it's the best. Definitely the best.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
When I was a teenager, I enjoyed iRobot with Will Smith.
That was going.
I thought that was kind of that one's kind of interesting because there's there's not just artificial intelligence when you think about the robots themselves, but then there's literally an AI in the movie, which, spoiler alert, turns out to be the actual villain within the movie. And so, I thought that was a fun one.
What was that one with Shia LaBeouf? Eagle Eye. Did you guys see that one?
I didn't like Eagle Eye.
I didn't love it either, but the concept, was the AI
supercomputer
controlling, military action. Mm-hmm. Kind of interesting. I think the best AI movie that has ever existed, though, was definitely War Games.
I was just gonna say War Games because Eagle Eye it's kind of similar to that.
Yeah. Would you like to play a game? How about global thermonuclear war?
Tic-tac-toe? Don't they play that?
I think that's how they beat it, right? Is they make it play tic-tac-toe and realize that it's unwinnable.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Whoops.
For the 1986 film.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, come on.
Two more modern ones that I think are really, really interesting are Ex Machina and Her. They're both, I don't know, they really make you think. I think Her is a lot more closer to home with like an assistant on your phone that becomes so real that you think it's more of a person. And I think they're even getting into doing that with your friends, family that have passed on. You can take their whole digital footprint and turn it into this app that will allow you to communicate with them. And the AI basically gives responses based on what it has learned, what they would have said. Like that's happening now. So I think that idea of that kind of app plus the Her, if anyone didn't watch it, Her was just a smartphone assistant that was real life. I mean, she was everything you needed her to be and would learn from you. And so who's his face? Joaquin Phoenix just kind of falls in love with his phone assistant. Just kind of that and Ex Machina just make you think about what could happen at an extreme based on where we're at now. Like what's the craziest scenario of what could happen?
Yeah, I haven't seen Her, and I've seen almost all of Ex Machina. In Ex Machina, whew, that movie definitely leaves you with a creepy feeling towards the end. So
yeah.
And I don't think I watched Her just because I didn't want to have that creepy feeling of watching a man fall in love with his phone assistant. But I think
it just felt like I didn't see it either because it felt like the guys who fall in love with their anime pillowcases.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was pretty innocent. It just kind of gave you a view of what this lonely person, what he latched onto. I don't know. But, I mean, everyone has Siri or Google Home, Google Assistant. And so it's not all that far-fetched.
No, it's not. And that's why, I think some people are like, oh, it's like, no, like... I think this will be very much a thing moving forward into this new age that we're headed towards. So
sadly, yes. But if you look at like Iron Man and the original Jarvis, he was basically just like an amped up virtual assistant, and they were like friends, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Then he became Vision, right?
Yeah. Spoiler.
So you never know. Your AI could become a superhero and fall in love with a human.
You just need the soul stone.
Yeah,
That's
all you need.
You got a superhero.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Matrix, good AI movies.
Of course.
Yeah, Matrix. Yeah, that's a classic.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then Minority Report is kind of based off of what are those cogs or whatever they're called? Little different. Precogs.
Yeah, that's not artificial intelligence. Those are human beings that can.
But they did have AI in like the eye detection systems and the way they tracked criminals.
Yeah.
Yes, but I was just thinking like the way of actually reading the future. That didn't feel like. I don't know if I would classify that as artificial intelligence.
No. But then the way they chased everybody down was all using AI, and they still ran. Even
everybody runs.
Yeah,
everybody runs.
That was a great movie.
That is a great movie. In fact, it was funny. Like a couple of years ago, because that movie came out 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But it's funny. Like 3 or 4 years ago, we were on vacation. We were on like a plane going internationally, and it was like, everyone's just watching movies for 10 hours straight. And it was funny. You walk around on the plane, everyone was watching Minority Report for some reason. It's not even a modern or current movie, but so many people are just sitting there watching it, myself included.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, but I imagine it holds up pretty well. I mean,
it does. There's not a lot of action in the movie. There's not a lot of special effects in the movie. It's just it's a solid sci-fi movie, and the story's interesting. I again, spoiler alert, but like one thing that I really like about that movie is like you're kind of like, in some ways you kind of get closure and you're happy that, he's able to kind of take down the system and prove his innocence and all that fun stuff. But on the flip side, like he never finds out what happens to his son or anything like that. And so I don't know. It felt semi-realistic and a nice broken hero.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, I was thinking of just the concept of it as it relates to AI, just because you can become so predictive, right? Like you were saying about based on your search history or whatever, like Google knows what you might like. And so who knows, maybe we'll get to a point where they're predicting us breaking laws based on our tendencies and searches and whatever. And I don't know.
That would be wild. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that is definitely an interesting leap.
That's what made me think of it. Any others? Can't think of any.
No, I think that's pretty good.
That's the end-all, be-all list. Top 10 list. All right, cool. Well, that's about it for part 1. Stay tuned. Part 3, 4, and 5. And 2. 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're coming. Okay. As always, be sure to... So we post a copy of our podcast on YouTube. You just have a picture plus our podcast. They're fantastic. Go watch them. So subscribe and like and comment on YouTube. And then you can find the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, Stitcher, CastBox, iHeart.
Keep
what
going.
Else? I can't think of it. There's more for sure. That wavy one. The blue wave. I don't know. But feel free to send us an email at thecouchboard@gmail.com. Also, you can subscribe or follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all at The Couchboard. And that's about it. Any other last words? Thoughts? Cool.
This was fun.
That was fun. Yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah.
If I do say so myself.
Well, good.
If I were going to review this episode, I would give it 5 stars.
6 stars, even.
Ooh.
All right, next week we're talking about bathroom tendencies with Colby. All right. Thank you, Colby.
I think it's Max's turn next week.
It is my turn next week. I still haven't figured out my topic.
Well, then Colby has 2 weeks to really get a good episode put together.
Take notes, Colby.
Probably our best episode yet.
What we do in the bathroom. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.